Good morning, everyone. This is the meeting of the Finance, Asset and Performance Management Scrutiny Group. My name's Councillor Louise Brown. I'm the chair of the committee. If we go through the agenda, item 1 is apologies for absence, please.
Councillor Ali, Smith and Williams and Sally Chapman.
Thank you. Number 2 is declarations of interest. I would take this as and when, but I think we usually have a declaration in relation to our own particular authority in case there's any item in relation to that. Is that correct?
Yes, usually we would be, but I'm not aware of anybody making such declarations today.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is chairperson's announcements. I don't have any announcements. So if we go to item 4, which is to receive the minutes of the scrutiny group held on the 11th of October 2020.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Can we just do the roll call, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
So, Councillor Andy, we've got apologies for. Councillor Brown?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer? I can't see Councillor Spencer. Councillor Holmes?
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hussey? Can't see Councillor.
Present.
Oh, yes, there you are, Councillor Hussey. Thank you. Councillor Jarvie?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lister?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Molson?
Present. Can I also apologise? I have to leave in 30 minutes. I have to go for my booster injection.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the notice. Councillor Morgans?
Present. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Councillor Norton?
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
Yes, present. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, we've got apologies for. Councillor Thomas?
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Williams, we've had apologies for. So that's the roll call completed, Chair. Thank you.
So if we go on to item 4, which is the minutes of the scrutiny group held on the 11th of October 2021. What I'll do is I'll go through them page-wise, and then if there's any inaccuracy, please let me know. So page 3.
Chair, do you want to move her first?
Well, I wanted to check the accuracy first, because
okay.
Then if we have any amendments, then obviously that can be included in the moving and seconding of it, yeah. If that's okay. Page 4, page 5.
Madam Chair, can I just come in, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much. The top of page 4, property asset strategy, where the property strategy manager explained the process for the completion of building condition surveys, use of architects and the involvement of local authority inspectors and appointment of respective local authority building control. I did ask at the last meeting if for the projects which were referred to at Rose, Whitchurch, Treorchy, mainly Pontypridd, we would be using, or the authority would be using local authority building control and not approved inspectors. Although the manager has made reference to building control, there is no statement there where the authority will be using local authority building control and not the private sector.
Yeah, I think actually, Councillor Holmes, I think on page 6, when it says resolve that under 7.1 and 7.2, I think there was a note about consideration of alternative emergency access. But if everyone's agreed, perhaps we could add 7.3 about the use of local authority building control inspectors. Would that suffice, do you think, if the members are in agreement?
Yep.
Because that would be altering it at the on page 6, which is where it comes in the minutes in terms of the actions we resolved. Is that acceptable?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Madam Chair, as long as we're
Yeah.
using local authority building control, I haven't got a problem.
Yeah.
Like I've explained, I've made a statement that I am an approved inspector in the private sector, but I appreciate that we are using public money, and the public person, as far as I'm concerned, should go back into the public sector.
So if we go on page 6, page 7 and page 8, are there any other amendments that we can think of that we'd like to, in terms of accuracy? I'm taking silence as no. So if you want to move those minutes, Councillor Holmes, with that amendment.
Yeah,
on
I'd
page
move that,
6.
Madam Chair, with the amendment.
Yeah, and then if I could have a seconder.
Yeah, second.
And do we actually need to vote on that at all?
No, we don't need to, Chair. That's fine.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take that as agreed unless anybody has any objection then. Okay then. So if we move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is the CIP FA. Sorry?
Come in on matters arising, from the minutes of the last meeting, matters arising on page 7. There was an outstanding action which was deferred to this meeting around the appointment of members champions.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, sorry, that matters arising wasn't listed, but so do you want to go through that then, Gerard, please? To see if we've got anybody who wants to put forward as a champion for those things.
Yeah, very quickly. Obviously, it's been custom and practice each year to appoint a member champion for land and buildings, ICT, fleet and engineering, and operational and personal equipment. At the last meeting, obviously, when we were discussing the changes to the terms of reference and the proposed perhaps changes to the construction of the scrutiny group, it was decided to defer to this meeting then because of the outcomes that may change. The report that was presented at the last meeting, it stated that the previous or the existing champions were Councillor Val Smith for land and buildings, Councillor Arvan Roberts for ICT, but she's no longer on this committee. Same with Councillor Steve Evans for fleet and engineering, and Joel Williams was for operational and personal equipment. So it's whether members deem they still want to appoint member champions for those 4 categories, and if so, are there any nominations? And obviously, there's 2 existing, but if we want to replace the 2 for ICT or replace all 4.
Madam Chair, I would move resubmit. Sorry, I would move Val Smith reselect.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. I think Councillor Norton put his hand up to say something. Did you? Was that relevant to the point that Councillor Holmes?
Well, I support Councillor Holmes that we've got the 2 people who've done in the past and want to carry on. I think that's the best thing to do because they already obviously know what they're doing and they're already in place. But at this point, seeing we're already halfway through the year. Would it be really, and obviously, make up a committee will significantly probably change coming into next year because obviously, make up of councillors will change with the elections. Is it worth holding off the other 2 positions until obviously, we get to the new term in 2022, rather than trying to have someone in place for maybe 2 or 3 months?
I think that's a reasonable suggestion. What's your response, Gerard?
Councillor Shaw is coming in as well.
Sorry, Councillor Shaw, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, just to move my support for Councillor Norton's proposal.
Yeah, because we've only got till sort of the end of April, haven't we? Till the next committee comes in. I'm not sure how many meetings the councillor champions have. So I think we'll defer it then till the May 22. Unless there's going to be a problem with that, is there, Gerard?
No, as I say, they're not statutory roles or anything. It's just that we've done it as sort of custom and practice. So
I mean, if anybody wants to volunteer in the meantime, I don't think there'd be any objection.
Can we just reselect Val Smith and the other person which was mentioned, which I've forgotten?
Councillor Williams, yeah.
Councillor Williams, yeah, Val Smith was London Buildings and Councillor Williams was Operations, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think I moved it, Madam Chair. Daniel seconded.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy second it.
We'll put those two forward, and then ICT and Fleet and Engineering. I think what we'll do with that is we'll defer that unless there's any councillor who wants to volunteer in the meantime.
Just in order to confirm that resolution, then Chair, could I ask all members to please switch on their cameras briefly and give me a show of hands of who is in agreement with that resolution? So to accept that resolution, if you can raise your hands now, please, members. That's lovely. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, I suppose in terms of matters arising, I suppose the whether there was any extra information with regard to the new terms of reference. Is there any update on that at all, Gerard?
It's going through the existing committee structure now. So it went to HR and Equalities Committee the beginning of the month, in November, for the initial proposal to reduce from 15 members down to 10, which HR and Equality supported. It's now going, the next stage is going to the FA&PM committee next Monday. And then obviously following their decision, then it'll be going back to the Fire Authority either in February or March next year.
All right, okay, thank you. That's helpful to know. So if we come on to item 5 now, which is the CIP FA Financial Management Code, and I think Chris Bolton, the Treasurer, is presenting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some members may already be familiar with this if they've seen this going through their own authorities, because it is something that's going through all public sector organisations, certainly within Wales, and I know the local authorities were early adopters on this. Essentially, the Fire Authority, like all other public authorities, follows a number of different codes already, financial good practice codes, including things like the Prudential Code, Treasury Management Code, and the various accounting codes of practice that we adhere to in our financial management. But as a result, really, following on from the last 10 years of austerity, there have been a number of high-profile I'll call them failures, coming to the brink in some cases of public authorities where there's been an indication that perhaps services might be affected by lack of money, lack of finance. And as a result of that, there was a move to actually implement a financial management code, which essentially was about sustainability of organisations from a financial perspective. SIPFA have developed the code and have put it now as a kind of requirement for public authorities. So everybody is going to have to sign up to this. And this really is the sort of first part in a two-step process for the Fire Authority to sign up. Originally, the timescales were that SIPFA wanted a shadow year from April 20 to March 21, with full implementation in 21-22. Of course, COVID got in the way of that a bit in terms of everybody's practices. And in the annual governance statement that we completed last year, following discussion with auditors, we've agreed that effectively we would be implementing at the end of this year. So we will have full implementation thereafter. The idea behind the code is there are some key principles for what good financial management looks like. And I'll take you through those in a minute. And then they basically translate those principles into financial management standards, of which there are a number. And in order for members to sort of deal with this in a digestible form, if you look at page 15 of your agenda, there is a diagrammatic form of the FM code there. So you hopefully can see across the top you have the 6 principles around leadership, accountability, transparency, standards, assurance and sustainability. And then within each of those you have the financial management standard which is required. So they're all listed there under their respective principle. So the idea is that essentially we're looking for compliance in each of those areas. Now, in order to take this forward, what we did within the organisation is to do a bit of a self-assessment exercise. And the self-assessment exercise we undertook is included in Appendix 2 of the report. So that essentially goes through each of the financial standards. It looks at the degree of compliance we've already got, the current position statement around what the authority does, any evidence that sort of backs that up, and then critically, are there any actions required which the authority should or shouldn't take to sort of move us forward. The one thing I would say is that as far as the compliance is concerned, you'll see there's a sort of, we've used a green, amber, red traffic light system. What I would stress to members is those are levels of compliance. So low compliance, medium compliance, high compliance. They're all compliance. There isn't any area of the FM code where we are failing to comply as an authority at this moment in time. In fact, in most cases, we're already doing what would be expected of any public authority in financial management terms. But there are some areas where we've just highlighted, and these are the areas in red within the self-assessment, are things which we perhaps should consider, might want to consider, which members may have a view on, to actually just improve or make slightly more robust the processes that we follow in terms of achieving each of the standards. So what I was going to do, rather than sort of talk endlessly about all of the standards and all of the areas, what I was just going to do was touch on each of those standards where we have dropped some red text in there in terms of potential actions, so members can understand perhaps a little bit about the thought process there. And the first of those is, bear with me if I can find the page number, page 17, where the appendix starts, which is the first leadership standard. And that's the leadership team able to demonstrate that the services provided by the authority provide value for money. Now, we're happy that we consult on our budgets. We provide information to the authorities via a sequence of road shows where we visit all the authorities to explain our budgets, how we provide them, what money we put in. We clearly do comparisons year on year with the medium-term financial plan to show whether we are increasing or reducing budgets in comparison to the available funding within Wales. And we provide a whole variety of service statistics and the profile of the service as well to understand the background to that money. The two areas which we considered here was, the first one was the use of benchmarking. That is comparing ourselves with other organisations. And the second was about improving our procurement and contract management awareness. I think that the second one is a kind of given. We do a lot of work around procurement and contract management, but we just want to ensure that across the service everybody's aware of the need to make sure that they are touching on their contracts regularly, and that contract management is embedded as part of their day-to-day work, really. The benchmarking one is a bit more interesting. We've tried to do some benchmarking in the past, as have other organisations on us. The difficulty is it's quite difficult to find comparators within the service sector. As an authority, we're slightly unique in South Wales in that we've got a coastline, we've got a valleys geography, which impacts on our ability to provide services in particular ways. And therefore, doing simple cost-based benchmarking exercises can yield some slightly odd answers. It makes us look like we've got more stations, perhaps, than we should have. But of course, there's a reason for that. You can't drive from a station in one valley straight over the top of the valley into the next valley. You have to go up and down the valleys to get from one place to another. So we've sort of concluded on that if we do use benchmarking, we should be clear that we should be benchmarking against good comparators, that we shouldn't simply say compare South Wales Fire Authority with the London Fire Authority, because they're just not good comparators for one another. So I think we're sort of happy that benchmarking has a role, but we should use it selectively where appropriate. Second one on the next page is the authority complying with the SIPFA statement on the role of the Chief Financial Officer. We do comply. The potential action there was we were considering whether or not finance staff should have a formal sign-off process for the financial implications included within authority reports. So at the moment, finance are involved in discussions on all matters affecting the authority, but we did wonder whether it'd be worthwhile just putting a formal process, perhaps to confirm within authority reports that finance are happy with the content of the report from a financial perspective. There's an administrative burden to that, and we don't want to become overly bureaucratic in it, but we think it might be worthwhile just looking at that as a process. The next one on reference O there is the leadership team monitoring the elements of its balance sheet. The key action here was the development of a BMIS finance dashboard. Now, some members, if they're familiar with the information provided in various authority reports, will know that BMIS is our information system, which we capture all the information around operational incidents, things like fires and RTCs and so on, how many times we deploy people to incidents and stuff like that. But we also use it for non-operational stuff. And one of the considerations we've got here is we actually start to load some finance information into that system as well. So key information about things like our budgets and our capital program spend, elements of our balance sheet, so our reserves and stuff like that, into a BMIS dashboard so that we can see that information and the leadership team can see that information at a moment's notice. The information is already available. It's available from our finance systems. This is just about a matter of making it a bit more transparent. And members will be pleased to note, I'm sure, that we've already started that process. So that's kind of underway in terms of what we're doing there. The next one, a few items further down, is item L under transparency. And this is about engagement with appropriate stakeholders. Now, we undertake a budget consultation every year as part of our budget process with our local authority partners. The question is really, do we need to do more around the medium-term financial plan? And are there other stakeholders that we would wish to consult with? Now, I'm sure as members you realise that you obviously go out to the public, to council taxpayers and things like that. It's an interesting situation with the fire authority, of course, because we don't have a council tax precept. We don't get money directly from council taxpayers. We get it from the councils themselves and Welsh Government. So there's a question about, is there an appropriateness around that? The other thing we do at the moment is when we do the improvement plan, we do provide information to the public there around financial matters as part of that process. So there is an element of engagement with the public in terms of our improvement planning agenda. So there's a question about whether or not that is actually going to provide much benefit in terms of the budget process specifically. The next one, which is around option appraisal methodology. The authority does use option appraisal and appraisal and evaluation matrices for a variety of the work that it undertakes, and that's listed in the report there. I think one thing we could do there is just document that process so we provide a sort of consistent approach, so we make sure that it is documented and we all understand that we're doing the right thing at the right time. I don't think there's any more than documentation required there. Just jumping down to page 23 of the report then, which is about the leadership team demonstrating in its actions and behaviours responsibility for governance and internal control. The one thing that we've been discussing for some time now in the service is the need to agree a common suite of project documents. Again, project management, project approval and monitoring goes on across the service for all major projects. So we're not saying it doesn't happen, but this is about making it consistent. So it's ensuring we have a consistent approach for it wherever possible across the service. And again, we think that's a very reasonable thing to do to make sure that that is in place. And that Chair, is the end of the items where we've commented on, where we believe there are specific actions or considerations which we can take to improve the compliance with the code. But again, I would come back at the end of that and stress to members, this isn't an issue about getting from non-compliance to compliance. This is about simply improving and making the process more robust. I am happy as the treasurer of the organisation, more than compliant with the FM code as we stand. And at that point, Chair, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to invite members to perhaps comment on any of the items I've raised, or whether they feel there's any other areas which are not listed here, which they believe should or shouldn't have something done to them.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. And just a question I've got. You've gone through it and you've suggested potential actions, and just wondered, obviously in the recommendations it says consider the content of the FM code and make any necessary recommendations to the FA&PM committee on areas which it believes should be strengthened or improved. You've mentioned potential actions. Do you think within that recommendation we should include the potential actions that you've put in red on the right-hand column of this report?
Yes, Chair, that was the intention. So, I mean, effectively, we will be taking this report forward to the FA&PM. Quite happy to include the self-assessment in that, with those potential actions included, obviously, so that so that the FA&PM can be aware of them as well. It was really whether members felt that any of them were not appropriate to take forward, or indeed whether or not it was all of them, or whether or not members felt there was something else that ought to be considered and added to that list. In terms of the FA&PM consideration.
Just a quick question before I throw it open to members. On page 23, when it says project documents, presumably projects go across different departments. So I just wondered, obviously if you've got sort of a central folder of particular projects, you'd have to have a section of the fire authority who was actually responsible for accumulating the information across the departments. So I mean, does that happen anyway, or is that something that can be suggested?
Yeah, the critical thing is here, as I just mentioned, I think, Chair, all projects are appropriately managed at the moment. There's no suggestion that projects are going unmanaged. It's just trying to achieve a consistency within the documents to ensure that we follow the same process. So there's a similar process of evaluation, approval and monitoring across the service. And everybody uses those same documents. We're hoping that as part of the IT changes we are currently starting to implement around the Microsoft 365 project, that the consistent use of documents and the single use of documents and the tracking of documents becomes much more robust anyway within that. So that will assist in this process, I hope. So it is about consistency of the documentation rather than it is happening or it isn't happening. It's just consistency we're looking for.
Yeah, that sounds like that's good for inputting information on an ICT basis, that it's available, the system available to everybody. But I just wondered whether or not a particular department should be allocated responsibility for a particular project to make sure that that there's an overview of that.
That does happen, Chair. So every project we've got will have appropriate project leads, project managers, and so on allocated to them. Some of them obviously happen within small service areas. Some of them happen on a fire authority wide basis. So they would have a different management structure for them. But that does happen, yes. In terms of the monitoring of that, what the idea here is, we would make these documents transparent to the organisation, so the leadership team and others would be able to see project management documentation for all projects. So it wouldn't just be kept in a cupboard in somebody's office and not be able to be seen by
inputted. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's the intention. Yes.
Yeah. So if I throw it open for any members' questions, Councillor Norton.
So yeah, on for consultation, I think the authority does a really good job of obviously doing outreach to the 10 local authorities. I do agree doing a public one might not be appropriate because obviously the money does come from the councillors directly rather than obviously a precept at the moment. But my only concern is, even though you do a really good job at reaching out to the councils, most years I find for 5 years I've been on this committee that you only get 1 or 2 or maybe 3 who actually respond. So then as a member, it's really hard to take that as whatever they say is valid feedback when you only have a very small sample, or only maybe 1 or 2 authorities actually giving any feedback on what we're actually doing. So would it be at all appropriate to also maybe do a survey to the councillors in the 10 local authority? Because hopefully then at least some of them would fill it out, so you would then maybe have a bit more feedback on what actually the council base of the 10 local authorities think, as well as reaching out to the local authorities as an administrative body as well.
No, that's an interesting comment, Chair, because as somebody who's been part of the different activities we've done around this, Councillor Norton's right. The one thing we do find is if we put a straightforward letter, as we do every year, to the authorities asking for their consultation input, what we tend to get back is either the odd comment saying, yes, we support the proposed budget, or the odd one which asks us for more information behind it, which we provide clearly, and then the odd one that simply sort of acknowledges it with an appropriate degree of scepticism because they don't want to pay the bill. That's the sort of typical response we get across the piece. And as you say, it's normally about 2 or 3. What we've found is when we've done the road shows where we've actually gone to the authorities, so the chair or vice chair of the authority, together with usually myself, the chief fire officer, and maybe a support officer as well from the directorate, what we find is we obviously do presentations to the council, whether in a formal or informal environment, and we get a lot more interest from individual members who input to the work of the fire authority. They can comment on it, they can say whether they agree with what we're doing, usually very supportive, I would add, but at least it engenders a discussion so you can understand a bit more about what their views are. It unfortunately is quite difficult to do all 10 of those every year. So what we try and do is every few years we go through that process.
Yeah, I think that was useful. I went to one of those because it obviously helps to explain, the background to it, really, doesn't it? So what do you think, Councillor Norton? And then I'll come back to Councillor Shaw, who's got his.
Well, my suggestion would be, instead of doing a roadshow, it does, as Chris says, take a lot of resources, chairs, maybe just do a survey to members, so you have some general information explaining obviously why the authority is asking for this, and then having a simple 2-minute survey, and then obviously we could then feed that back to the members of this authority what members totally thought, and you could even break it down potentially to individual local authorities if enough people did the survey.
I mean, possibly that could be done on the years that you don't go out on the roadshow, or as well as. What do you think, Chris?
We can consider it. Let's take a look at it and see what FA&PM think and what the authority thinks, and we can see how that might be constructed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris, for your report. All well received and well documented again. Very pleased to see the authority looking at the SITFA code. I've always had the highest regard for the bureaucracy, if you like, of the fire authority, and I think this actually takes some good steps to make it unified across the whole authority. So it has my full support. On the issue of engaging local authorities, I think there is an issue there. Yeah, and when we've had road shows, it is phenomenal the difference in attitude it creates in people. I appreciate there is an overhead there, but something as simple as the informatic we get once a year with the number of fires, etc., and then the cost per person would probably be a very cheap and effective way of getting the message across to all councillors in the region. But other than that, excellent report. I'm glad to see the SITFA code so well considered. And I've had every confidence you'll be able to deliver it, Chris. Thank you.
Okay.
Has any other member got any questions that they want to raise? I can't see any. I can't see any hands. I just wanted to ask a further question about on page 17. You mentioned about use of benchmarking, and obviously, there are. We often have a rural area, so you might end up with more fire stations and so forth, which you explained. But I just wondered whether the benchmarking was with other fire authorities in Wales. And in terms of procurement, one of the issues on the EU regulations was that you had to go through a process of procurement, and often the local contractors lost out on that, because it was quite a bureaucratic process. And I just wondered if that had changed at all, or if you were still having to go through the EU regulations on things.
The simple answer to that is we're still bound with appropriate procurement processes. We do try and influence those processes where we can, so that we get the right answers out. And I say that in the most genuine terms. We're not trying to fiddle the system or anything, but we do look for sustainability angles and things like that, so we can actually include a variety of aspects within the contracts that help us try and manage that position. Again, sort of reinforce, Chair, the process around procurement and the letting of contracts. There's no issues with that. We're perfectly happy with that. This is kind of what happens really after those contracts have been put in place, and the processes that follow on to ensure that we're doing it appropriately. On the benchmarking, we have done in the past some work around benchmarking within Wales, but obviously with only 3 authorities, it's quite difficult because you aren't getting really a representative sort of sample. And the other aspect is the 3 authorities in Wales, because are quite different in themselves, in that we've got the big urban areas within the southeast, whereas North Wales obviously haven't got that same structure and the same organisation of their workforces either to deal with operational incidents in some respects. So it's quite difficult to again kind of do that direct benchmarking. What I would say is, if we're going to take benchmarking forward, it has to be appropriate and comparative benchmarking. We have to select people who look like us as fire authorities, and that doesn't necessarily mean Wales. It means across the UK in terms of the types of services and the areas that we cover. So that's what we would endeavour to do.
That's fine. So less members. Sarah, did you want to say something? You were just about to.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as this is an item for decision, I'll have to take a roll call and votes for this one. So when we're in a position to do so, I'll do the roll call on the decision.
Okay, thank you. I think the recommendations on page 9 were that the Scrutiny Committee consider the content of the FM code and make any necessary recommendations to the FA&PM Committee on areas which it believes should be strengthened or improved. I think we could add the potential actions that have been highlighted, as well as the comments that we've had with regard to improving consultation, which Councillor Norton and Councillor Shaw have mentioned. So if we could add those as within those recommendations, unless any member objects to that. And then if we go to the vote, then Sarah, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. So can I please have your vote, Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Please, thank you. Councillor Holmes, I can see that you've been distracted by a phone call. Are you in a position to vote?
Yeah. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. It was something cropped up. Yeah, I'm in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Hussey?
Yes, in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvie?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Lister?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Molson has left us as predicted. Councillor Morgans?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Norton?
In favour.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shaw?
In favour, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Thank you, Sarah. So if we move on to the next report, which is item number 6, and it starts on page 27 of our agenda, and this is a review of the fleet and vehicle strategy, budget and planning assumptions and progress against the plan. And I believe this is going to be presented by Chris Tenby, Head of Fleet and Engineering. So if I go over to you, Chris, please. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, councillors. Hope you're all keeping well. If I could ask you to turn to page 28, please, where we look at the capital budget and the progression against it. I think the first subject to bring up is on item 2.3.2. There's a paragraph there explaining how we look to change our 18-year-old recovery vehicle. And this sort of shows a picture of where the motor vehicle industry is today, with long delays due to the shortage of semiconductors. So we put this tender out to change a vehicle, and unfortunately we had no returns. There's not one manufacturer, commercial manufacturer out there who will supply us with a new vehicle put underneath the recovery vehicle. We've spoken to sort of sales representatives since, and they've told us that the soonest that they will be able to take an order for a new commercial vehicle will be in January. So it's our intention to go back out to the market in January 2022. And moving on to the next paragraph, we took delivery in April 2020 of 6 new fire appliances. The fire appliances were fitted what we call the modified cab, which takes the BA sets out of the crew cab, places them in the rear body to give the firefighters a safer, comfortable ride. Following feedback from those firefighters, we then went on and ordered a further 8 appliances for this financial year. We've taken delivery of 4 of those appliances. They're currently at the body manufacturers in emergency 1. But unfortunately, 4 of them have been delayed, they tell me, until January 2022, and possibly longer. So there may be some rollover of the capital budget for those, but hopefully not. Keep our fingers crossed. Moving on to 3.5, we took delivery of 4 Mercedes Sprinter 4-wheel drive operational vans. So these vans are sort of transit-sized van, 3.5 ton, which are utilised for wildfires. They've got an high-pressure fogging unit in the back, which is used mainly on grass fires. So they're great for the narrow lanes and fields where the larger vehicles can't operate. So they are currently on the run at Maesteg, Pontypridd, Caerphilly and Treorchy. Also in build currently are 3 Scania rescue tenders. So they're currently still at the factory in Sweden. They're due for completion in sort of end of November, beginning of December. They will then be transferred over to Germany, where they have a specialist windshield system fitted, sort of on request of the firefighters. Then from Germany, they will go over to emergency 1, hopefully January, and the completion for that build is due in week 29, which I believe is July 2022. And they're a little different from the existing rescue tenders, where along with the rescue equipment capability, they will also have capability to carry water rescue equipment as well. So we're looking forward to seeing them. One of the main changes we made at sort of the beginning of the year was, with Welsh Government's drive to go as low zero emissions as possible by 2030, we had a look at the vehicle replacement programme and decided it would be beneficial to change it from 15 down to 12 years. That was to ensure that all of our frontline appliances become Euro 6 compliant sooner than was originally planned. it'll also give us the opportunity to keep implementing the modified cabs for firefighters, safety and comfort. We've also been keeping a close eye on what else is available within the alternative fuels for fire appliances. And although there's one prototype vehicle available at Emergency One, it's currently at a cost of £600,000 in comparison to the £255,000 we currently paying for a water ladder. And there's also other sort of concerns with that is the charge rate is over 2 hours. So once they've depleted the batteries, that vehicle will be off the run for a further 2 hours until it can get up to full charge. And also the capacity that it needs to charge that vehicle is in excess of 150 kilowatt. So sort of to put that in comparison, the 22 electric vehicle chargers that we've had fitted at headquarters only take up 140 kilowatts. So it's an awful lot of financial implications with the infrastructure as well as the capability of the vehicle. And on page 30, this is where we do sort of have made progress with electric vehicles. So we've introduced 3 Nissan MV200s. One of those the fully electric vans with a range of 160 miles. One of them is a people carrier, which we placed down in Roth Station as a station van. There's one that have been used as a second van by the ICT team, and the third van is a shared asset between fleet and stores, trying to get as much use of that van as possible. Where we really have made inroads is the leasing of the 21 fully electric cars. So we took on 11 Kia Niros, which is a mid-size 4-seater car, and 10 Hyundai Kohonas. Both cars are capable of approximately 260 to 300 mile range, depending on weather conditions. And they seem to be going down really successful. A lot of the staff that are driving them are coming back with positive reports. So where possible, where we can sort of exchange a combustion engine for an electric vehicle where it'll work, that is our intended plan for the future going forward. Also, we purchased 6 self-charging hybrid Kia Niros, and what they allowed us to do was to give them to operational personnel. They're a petrol engine that charges on the overrun, so there's no risk of them having to wait for a charge. That's about it for sort of the capital program. Is there any questions on that, please?
Councillor Holmes and Councillor Norton and Councillor Shaw are indicating.
Did you call me in then, madam?
Councillor Brown, you're on mute at the moment.
Oh, sorry, I turned it on mute so you couldn't hear me turning over the pages of the agenda. I think we've got Councillor Shaw and then Councillor Norton and then Councillor Holmes, and I'm sorry if I've got that in the wrong order. I didn't quite see you put the hand up first. So if we go over to Councillor Shaw first, please.
Right, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris, for your report. A couple of issues, I think, really. In the report you've delivered to us on page 29, you say about the reduction of the lifespan of a vehicle, which is a commendable decision, but it's not actually reflected in the underlying report. It still says 15 years in the underlying report. So the published report, if you like, probably needs some reflection. If I can leave that with you. But I do have another issue, probably an issue of concern that's been building up in my mind, and perhaps you can help me. With this move towards electrification, I understand Tesla, and I'll take that as an example, the cost of a replacement battery is £17,000, and the lifespan is somewhere around 5 years. So basically, there is no resale value of an electric vehicle if they're all following a similar model at 5 years, because the battery is more expensive than the resale value of the car itself. So there's an issue. But also, all these batteries have scarce resources in them. And does this progression towards electrification our global ambitions as an authority? There's two interesting ones for you to ponder, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. If over to you, Chris, please.
Yeah, so Councillor Shaw, with regards to the plan, yes, apologies for that. The plan will be updated because it's at the end of this 2021 period, and a new plan will be introduced in April next year with all the updated information. With regard to Tesla, not quite true. There's an 8-year warranty on all battery systems. Yeah, and it's not our intention for those vehicles to come to an end of life. Most of our vehicles will be a 4-year lease maximum. So that's where our vehicle would come in. We would keep it for a maximum of 4 years, and all of the risk and responsibility will be held back with the lease company. Does that answer your question?
It does indeed. Yeah, thank you very much. It does allay some of the issues I had.
Thank you. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's on the same. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report. It's on the same question as Councillor Saw on electric vehicles. Could we have a breakdown of the current number of electric vehicles, so pool cars and vans, are electric, and the current number was obviously not? And does the authority have a target date in mind when they will only replace pool cars and vans with electric or hybrid, and no longer obviously lease new fossil fuel cars? They're my only questions.
Yeah, Councillor Nolan, so currently we're running 40 alternative fuel vehicles out of 268 light vehicles. So we haven't set no targets, but what we have said is that where we can replace an internal combustion engine with an electric vehicle with no risk to operational personnel or capability, we will look to do that in order to reach zero emissions by 2030. But that will never be at the risk of operational capability.
Yeah, I think that answers the question, because I mean, obviously, although electric vehicles are preferable, I mean, there's things like the range and the charging and so forth, isn't there? You know, that are practical issues. If I come to Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel that's a very comprehensive report, and bearing in mind the answer to Daniel's question, I feel a lot happier that if my property caught fire, that they would be suddenly turning up in a very short time to put the fire out. And with that in mind, Madam Chair, I would move that we accept the report.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holmes. The only question I've got, I mean, I think Councillor Shaw raised the issue of batteries and in electric cars, because I saw a recent programme about cobalt batteries and how they where they were being mined, the people weren't treated as well as they could be, and just wondered about the issue of sort of the ethical side of the batteries. Is that something that, because some cars have cobalt batteries, and I think Tesla was possibly one of them, but they were trying to phase them out. Do we know the type of batteries that are being used?
So, I'm not a specialist in battery technology, I must admit. I did see the exact programme that you've seen. I think a little bit of blame was sort of directed towards Tesla in that programme, where it should have been directed at the mining company and the way they were treating local residents. But no, as for the technology, we're going on hopefully the manufacturer's recommendations. So no, I'm not 100% on the battery technology, but I would like to think that any manufacturer that is willing to supply these batteries are doing the correct thing.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think obviously in terms of value for money, the battery issue was something that was mentioned by Councillor Shaw, but you answered that by 4-year leases. Are they all short-term leases that you get on electric vehicles?
So over 100 of our light vehicles are leased. The only vehicles that we purchase outright at the moment are the 3 electric vans and the 6 Kia Niros. Everything else is on a 4-year lease.
Okay, thank you. I think I think Councillor Holmes has moved that we accept the recommendations of the report. I think it's just actually to note the content of the document in support of the attached plan. I think that's, and I don't think that's one that we have to actually vote on.
That's correct, Councillor Brown. So we just need to have it moved and seconded.
Yeah, so could I have somebody moving the report and seconding?
I'd move the report, Madam Chair.
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Councillor Jarvie, thank you. So if we move on to the next report, which is item 7, which is a review of the ICT strategy, budget and planning assumptions and project overview and progress against the plan to include capital report. So it's Chris Williams, Head of ICT, who's going to present that report, I believe. Thank you.
Good morning, members. The ICT strategy 2019 to 22. It's just come up towards the end of it. We're looking to put a new one in place. But there's a few key things I'd like to draw out. First, as part of the ICT strategy, we've got an information strategy. This information strategy came about from 2015, and the question that came to created it was, could we have one system that does everything? We had a number of firefighters posing that question to me, and the answer I told them was maybe, but it would take a long time to create, develop, and implement, and cost a lot of money. Instead, what we would look at as we move forward in time is to maximise the use of the systems we've got, reduce systems where we could, and when we're implementing new systems, think about what we're going to use it for as well as the primary purpose. So as we go down, we've got 4 key strands of that information strategy. We've got people, assets, operational intelligence, and finance. So within the people area, so the personal data, we've got 2 systems. We've got something called Core HR, which we use to record our existing HR data. And what we try to do with that system is maximise its use by developing a module. So we've got a recruitment module, we've got a personal review module. So each time we're looking at doing something, instead of buying a new system, let's see if we can make more use of the existing. The second people system we've got is Pdr Pro. And Pdr Pro is used by the operational personnel of the service to record competence. And again, in the same vein, what we're looking at is expanding that Pdr Pro to develop something called Learn Pro, which is integrated, which will replace a course mill system that we've got for delivering training materials. So each time we're reducing down. If we go on a bit further, we've got assets. In terms of asset management, if we go back 6 years ago, we probably had about 8 or 9 asset management systems. We're now down to 3. One of those is the Tramman system, which Chris makes use of for fleet engineering. And again, this year we further developed it so that we've got defect reports go straight into the system rather than having a separate system. And we've also got a pool car booking system built in. So the Tramman system doing quite a lot there. We've also got the 24/7 ICT asset management system. And what we've done with this, many departments now make use of this instead of their own systems. And the third asset management system is called Redkite for operational equipment. And what we're doing this year is we're doing a proof of concept to see if we could turn off Redkite and make use of 24/7, thereby, again, cutting down systems so people don't have to remember how to use these. The third area, operational intelligence. Operational intelligence is about our site-specific risk information, our business fire safety, so all the things about premises that we do. And this is a collaboration with West Midlands Fire Service, and we're, again, developing modules for this. We're currently working on a business fire safety system, and that system is going well, and we intend to continue to develop more modules with West Midlands. During this year, we've replaced the intranet. Again, looking at things we've got to replace, like any organisation, we've got 130 to 170 different servers and systems, and we've got to keep these updated. So this year, we looked at the intranet, and we've updated that to a more modern-looking system. In terms of major projects, I've just picked a few. The attached documents go into more detail, but if we look at infrastructure, we're looking at a printer strategy. These days we try not to print as much, and when we're looking at this new printer strategy, we're looking at more efficient printers, less printers, and also we're looking at better ways of using those printers. So yes, we are still doing printing, but massive reduction in printing has been done over the last few years. And obviously the way we work now, doing video conferencing, etc., people are not in the office printing. So again, as part of our printer strategy, we're trying to blend all those elements in. We're also doing a number of replacement programs. And again, when looking at replacement programs, the one thing I'm very keen to do is have ambition, but be a bit more practical about the resources. So in terms of the end user computer replacement program, we're going to do that over 3 years. The way that we do this also helps to make the capital, rather than big capital amounts, trying to be consistent over a number of years, trying to spread the load. So the end user computer replacement program, year 1, is about replacing these laptops. As you may be aware, when COVID, the pandemic, started up, we gathered as many computers as we could buy, and also we reused a number of older computers that were destined for the Wii skip. So what we've got to do is replace those laptops. So we've got to continue in this way of working, and in doing that, it means we've got to invest over the next 3 years to update all our equipment and keep it fresh. We've also got a VDI hardware replacement project. VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. What that means is that on the fire station, they've got a screen, and all the hard work is done on a server back here in the data center. It also keeps our data secure. And again, when we went out and done end user engagement the first time around, they came up with a set of requirements that they didn't want antivirus updates, Windows updates, and all those things every time they went to use the computer. So we got rid of that by doing it a different way. However, as part of the pandemic and people using video conferencing more, they wanted to use graphics. And obviously, there is some graphics capability, but we're now replacing it to give a much better graphics capability and the ability to use some of the other products we're going to talk about as we go down through the list. We've done a mobile data terminal project replacement this year as well. You'll be glad to hear that it didn't cost us any money. Welsh Government paid for it, which is always a good thing. And the mobile data terminals are on the appliances, and it provides them with risk information, operational procedures, and also it gives them a mapping capability. The new mobile data terminals, you can actually take off the vehicle and walk around, so they're a tablet device. But when the vehicle is moving, they're held securely. We've also, I'm going to skip down to page 70 now, voice gateways upgrade. So we've got a connection from us to BT. So when people pick up the telephone and they make calls outside the service, it uses that route. And similarly, when people phone into the service. As you may be aware that in a few years' time, BT is stopping the use of what we call the PSTN network. that's the phone in your house. The way that it works is completely different. So as part of our infrastructure upgrade, we're replacing our gateways, our connection to BT in a different way. So we're looking at technology, we're looking at the way things are going, and also we're trying to keep up to date. The next one on the list, Office Productivity Software and Services Project. That's a very big title for Office 365. Most of your organisations now use Office 365. We will be moving to Office 365 in 21 to 22. And then in 22, 23, we will look at expand the use of it, because we can see that it's going to have a very good collaborative aspect. And one thing that Chris Barton mentioned earlier about the way we file things and save things, we're open to, from day one, to actually get people to use it slightly differently to what they do now. So this project is a very big project. It's going to affect everyone in the service, but I'm hoping that it will deliver a number of benefits to us. And at that point, I'm going to stop. There's attached documents that talks about each and every project. There's a capital program that we put into place, and the ICT strategy is also attached. So I'm ready to take any questions on any of those documents.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation and the report. I've just got a couple of questions before I throw it open to other members. You mentioned about on page 70 at 2.5.7, BT has announced the shutdown of the existing public switchboard telephone network. Is that to do with the fact that perhaps people are not using landlines as much and just relying on mobiles? Is it anything to do with that? And the second question I've got is about in terms of when the firefighters are out on calls, there was this idea of transferring from radio calls to over the internet, but because of internet spots where it wasn't so clear, then that hasn't necessarily happened. So I just wondered about that situation. And the third question I'd got was about the Starleaf that we use, because I think in previous meetings we've all said it's Microsoft Teams is preferable, because I mean, for example, some of this is in Microsoft Teams on my council laptop. I'll get hand things in the chat bar to show me who's the next person in a meeting, so I think Microsoft Teams works better than Starleaf, and I just wondered about that. So that was three questions. First of all, about the BT PSTN network, and then the other two questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the last one first. So Microsoft Teams, we are currently in the process of moving to that as part of our Office system upgrade. So sometime next year, we'll be able to need meetings through Teams. So because, as you quite rightly point out, most of the public sector, most local authorities have moved to it. So we too will be moving to it. So hopefully that should make life a little bit easier for yourselves.
Okay, thank you.
The second question I'll take is on the PSTN. So the PSTN network, BT is switching that off. Two reasons. One that you mentioned, the number of people that use landlines has significantly reduced. So that you are correct in that area. But also because of the way that it works. And what I mean by that is if I make a call from here to Edinburgh, what it does, it takes a piece of cable all the way from here to Edinburgh through the system. And only I can use that bit of cable for the duration of my call. If you switch to the internet protocol, that single piece of cable could have several hundred conversations going on. So it's about BT and efficiency. They want to make use of more modern technology, because obviously the PSTN network is many years old. So the two answers there. And the third question was about, sorry, I've forgotten.
Microsoft Teams.
No, I've done the Teams.
digital comms with crews.
The radio thing.
Radio. So in terms of radios, we currently use a system called Airwave, which Motorola owns, and the UK is currently working on the replacement for Airwave called the Emergency Services Network. Now, the Emergency Services Network is going to be connected through EE, because the UK government don't want to purchase their own network, they want to make use of someone else's. So EE will be providing that network of communications. So it will be across a phone provider, but there will be certain things in this emergency services network, such as priority. So we will have priority if there's a football match in the centre of Cardiff or a rugby match, thousands of people trying to use the phone, we will push people off the line so that we can use it. So there's lots being done around this emergency services network.
Can I just, as a follow-up question on that, in the public switched telephone network, about it turning off at the end of 2025, I've got some concerns about that, because in my area there are areas which are sort of very bad. They can't get a mobile signal at all, and how would these people be able to call emergency services if I assume that means that the landlines would go, would they?
No. So what is going to happen is all the providers of phone services will be offering an alternative. So it's just the way that it's provided. So they're not going to unplug your phone in the house. It's just the way that phone is provided at the moment. For instance, as you may be aware, even if you haven't got any electricity in your house, the phone rings. And that's because BT provide 48 volts across the line. Now, they're going to take away that 48 volts. So the question that's gone back, from a number of people is, so if I'm in the house and I'm a vulnerable person and I've got no electricity, how can I make an emergency call? And what they're saying is the provider will have to provide something for vulnerable people. And that may be a little battery in the corner just to keep the phone running. So it's not advertised.
Because the old-fashioned phones, you didn't actually need when you've got an electric cut, and in the old-fashioned phones they'd still work, but not the plugged-in ones.
So they've got to provide something. So whoever provides your phone service, whether that be BT, Talk, or whoever else, they will have to provide these type of things to people.
Sorry. Has any other member got any questions on this report?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
No. So, thank you very much for the report. I think the recommendation is really to note the contents of the report. I don't think we need to vote on that. So, thank you very much for the report. The next one is item.
Just have that. Sorry, Chair. Can we just have that seconded and moved, please?
Oh yes. Sorry.
Or moved and seconded.
Yes, could somebody move that and second it,
I
please?
move that, Chair.
Sorry, who was that?
Hussey.
Oh, Councillor Hussey. And can somebody second it, please?
I'll second. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Shaw, thank you very much. So if we move on to item 8, which is operational and personal equipment strategy, budget and planning assumptions 2020 to 25, and that report is from the area manager Nigel Williams, and it's the first report we've had that hasn't been presented by somebody called Chris, which is quite unusual. And what page does that report actually start? Oh, I think it's
page 97.
Yeah. So if you could present that, please, Nigel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just probably to introduce myself first of all. Nigel Williams, Area Manager ORM. I'm new in post. I came into post in February and I replaced Gareth Davis. Gareth retired in May. We had a handover and obviously I've inherited Gareth's plan from 2020 to 2025, which he shared with you previously. So I just wanted to talk you through it. The report starts on page 97, and also there's reference to the asset replacement programme then on page 119 as well. As I mentioned, I'm quite new, very new to the team, and also I've got a new management team in place. So all the senior leaders, senior managers within my department, the 3 group managers are all new. We've all been sort of new in post this year, and there's sort of couple of key principles we've been working on really. We've been striving to obviously to achieve best value for the service, whilst maintaining quality in this really difficult world we're working in at the moment, and I'll cover that shortly. And also focusing on how we dispose of our assets as well, ethically and sustainably, and recognising that sometimes, even though we plan financially, we need to be sort of proactive, and not just proactive, reactive as well in the changing world that we're living in. And the key to a lot of the purchases is particularly around end user engagement. We want to make sure we procure the right kit and equipment today for firefighting tomorrow. And the world is changing rapidly, and kit and equipment changes rapidly. But ultimately, with your support, we can achieve and continue really to kit out our firefighters with the best kit and equipment available on the market. Okay, so moving, if I could just ask you to turn over, I want to talk initially around on page 99. It is round about asset recovery. We've had some issues in the past where we haven't had robust systems in place to recover, particularly firefighting kit and assets from people that finish within the service and people who retire. We now have a process working closely with HR and our department, ORM, and that if we do not get assets and equipment returned to us, an individual will be written to, and that is all logged as well. And we've got a really, really positive outcome to that at this moment in time. We do have quite a turnover of staff, as you particularly may be aware, with our on-call in particular. So it's really, really important that we actually get our kit and assets returned as soon as possible. The next section down on section 6 talks about the asset replacement program. I just wanted to just sort of give you an idea of what we've been doing this year. I inherited, as I said, a very, very busy department, sort of horizon scanning, looking to the future, and notable items in the capital program for 21 and 22 are replacement water bowser dams. Obviously, the dams in particular can get damaged out on calls, and we've replaced them with a much stronger type of dam now. Ultimately, if they get dragged and they get pulled up against really sharp objects in the past, we've had them damaged. So hopefully the new product that we have is going to do the job for us. The next item down is wet weather gear. We've gone out to market and we've just had that confirmed. I'm delighted to say it's coming a little bit under budget. We've gone through the procurement, we've gone through the tendering process, and the contract is just about to be awarded to a company called Keeler, which is the company we've used previously, and the quality on those products is really, really good. It's personal issue to all our tactical managers, and ultimately then it goes on as a stock issue on fire stations where we have a number of different sizes where firefighters can use the kit. As you'll be aware, in the geography where we live, we do need to have proper wet weather gear for our firefighters, particularly during winter and flooding periods. So we've got probably the best product on the market there. The next one down is looking at RTC equipment. Links quite nicely back to what we were talking earlier about batteries. We've been trialling, and we've just gone through the trials of the RTC equipment. RTC is one of our biggest risks within the service. We need to make sure our firefighters have the right kit and equipment. We've looked to spread the love a little bit on that one, because we have so many appliances that require replacement kit. We're going to spread the replacement over 3 years. The next item down, which is something I'm working on at the moment as well, is the replacement corporate wear. We're doing this in conjunction with Mid and West and North Wales. You'll be familiar with not the white stuff that I'm wearing today, but the blue shirts and blue trousers. We're looking to go out to procure a new kit in collaboration with Mid and West and North, but obviously maintaining our own identity. And that's something we're working on now, but it won't be covering in this financial year. All the procurement process will be run this year, but then it won't be actually looking to purchase that until the next financial year. Quite a big project, as you'd imagine. The chief, various, and even members, I would suggest, will have an opinion on what our fire and rescue service look like. So once we get to a point where we will have products coming in and samples, hopefully we can share that with all to have a look at the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service corporate wear for the future. A couple of other things on there then. We've replaced gas monitoring equipment at £30,000, PPV fans at 36, and also reciprocating saws at 24,000. The next section, just wanted to talk on page 100, on page 7, around disposal of assets. I mentioned to you earlier, we're keen to do this ethically and sustainably. We've got a very close working relationship with an organisation called FireAid, which I'm sure you're aware of, but also another one called IFRA, which is an International Fire and Rescue Association. They all form part of a charity board, and they work with countries around the world who are looking for to purchase or actually looking to be provided with firefighting kit and equipment. Some notable assets this year have been sent to Moldova and Ukraine and Lithuania, Philippines and Macedonia, India and Zimbabwe. So you can see we're actually sort of disposing of our assets to perhaps countries that are a little bit less fortunate than ourselves. And ultimately, that I just had an email, ironically, this morning, and I'll read it out briefly to you. This is from FireAid saying how much they've enjoyed our collaboration. It's basically achieved all working groups together, 15 organisations from around the UK and Ukraine have pulled this off, despite all the challenges of COVID, Brexit, and dreaded customs in just under 8 weeks. So that's really, really good for our reputation as a service, I think. And it just goes to show that we're forming part of a much bigger agenda in the UK. What we've also done, as you'll be aware, we've purchased all brand new firefighting kit for all our staff. And ultimately, I'm pleased to say we've experienced some major supply chain issues. We launched in May, and it's taken us a few months to actually get everybody kitted out perfectly, but I'm pleased to say that all the orders, including everybody's kitted with the right kit, and all the stores, we've got stock in stores, has been achieved. And in this worldwide market we're working in at the moment, that's pretty good indeed. So all our new firefighters coming in will have brand new kit to train in, and obviously then to respond to what we did with some of the legacy kit. We actually shared it with our auxiliary firefighters. We're currently looking to recruit more auxiliary firefighters, and now they've got a far better kit than the standard of kit should they ever need to be deployed. On a really positive note, we've actually, in replacement of the fire helmets, which we did in conjunction with the fire kit, some members on screen, I know, and other members have been graceful enough to provide us with a donation for the charity in exchange for the old helmets. We're still totaling up the exact amount, but we're somewhere near £8,000, which will be a donation to the charity. So I think that's really, really good. And ultimately, it's given everybody the opportunity to put some money back into the charity itself. So that's page 100. I refer you then just to the operation, and starts at page 103, the operational equipment asset management plan, and probably turning to page 119. Just gives you an idea of the planning. As I said, I inherited the plan from 2020 to 25. This is a live document. It does change frequently. I'm working very, very closely with the finance and procurement manager in how we can start planning for replacement kit in the future. You will note at the end of the boxes there's the lifespan. I think in the past we've probably left it too late to look at actually starting our processes to replace kit and equipment. So I've got my team working closely with finance and procurement to make sure we're doing it and we're planning a little bit better in front. It gives you an idea of the complexities as well of the world market at the moment. With the fire kit I mentioned earlier, there was a worldwide shortage of buttons, clasps and zips. It really is difficult. And while suppliers, have our needs at heart, ultimately they are sort of impacted by the general availability of supplies across the world. So I think that probably ends my overview of the report as it is. As I said, live document. it's ever changing, and ultimately the team are on it. What we actually do as well, this asset plan refers to initial issue of kit, and also then obviously replacement at the end of life. We're working closely with operations department because, as you'd imagine, operations are out at the forefront fighting fires and doing all the other stuff we do, but they do break things, and they can break things quite frequently. So we obviously work closely with its group manager Sean Moody for ops and Neil Davis for us. Meet regularly to discuss replacing operational equipment, not at the end of life, but obviously during midlife. And we try and share the love a little bit on that when it comes to finance, but ultimately to make sure that we are providing our people out there with the best kit and obviously replacing it as soon as we possibly can. So that sort of ends my summary. Have you got any questions, Chair?
Yes, thank you very much for that report, Nigel. I think the most interesting thing is about the ethical disposal of assets, and pleased to see fire appliance and ladders are going to countries that need it. Despite obviously all the difficulties in doing so, and notice the spare helmets were actually sold for the firefighters charity. I was just wondering about the firefighters charity. We don't hear very much about it. What sort of activities do they undertake? Do you know? I mean, I presume helping members who need it, but I presume there's a social area to it as well, is there?
Yeah, the regional representative was for the firefighter charity. Jeff Scrivens used to be a group manager in the service, retired a couple of years ago. I mean, fundraising has gone particularly quiet, obviously because of COVID. As you will be aware, as a service, we raise funds regularly with different activities. But I think Jeff is trying to stir up some more enthusiasm for the future. Hopefully, a post-COVID future where we'll get back to doing our car washes, we'll get back to doing a variety of charity events. But as you well know, it supports Harkham House and the other venues around the UK, where firefighters obviously go there and families and corporate staff go there for recuperation and recovery. So it's a real worthwhile cause. And as I said, £8,000 is a notable addition to that.
Yeah, Councillor Holmes, did you want to ask a question?
Well, what I biggest comment, Madam Chair, is a very interesting and comprehensive report, and I'd also endorse your observations, Madam Chair, that we're assisting those countries far worse off than ourselves. And what I would say is that I would move the report, and if they've got an helmet from the 1940s, which is brass, I'd be prepared to buy it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Has any other members
accept the report?
Has any other members got any questions, or could somebody second the recommendation? I think we just to know the contents of this.
I'll second it, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, Councillor Jarvie. Okay.
It's Hunter, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Hunter.
No, Hunter Jarvie.
Councillor Jarvie. Sorry, Hunter Jarvie.
Sorry to confuse you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we don't have to vote on this report, do we, Sarah?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the report, Nigel, and for the contents of it. So I think we've moved now to item 9, which is the forward work programme, which I'm just trying to check what page that's on.
That would be page 123. Geraint, did you want to work through the forward work programme?
Did you want to present it, Sarah, and just go through it with us?
I think Geraint wants to do that for us, so I'll hand over to Geraint Thomas.
Oh, Geraint.
Before I do, Chair, Councillor Shaw was indicating.
Well, it'd be more appropriate to let you do your bit, really, Gareth, but there are two things that caught my eye. I'm sure you'll attend to them before I get there.
Possibly one of them. Obviously the details set out within the forward work programme as a standard agenda from each year. The one thing from consideration which was raised at the last group meeting was the fact that the April meeting is scheduled for the 25th of April, and there was a request to fetch this meeting forward. So it's really for consideration of members today now, if we want to fetch that meeting forward to a date early in April. I know the week before that meeting is scheduled is Easter weekend, so probably the first week of April would be a good week to move that meeting forward to, if members are happy with that proposal.
Yeah, so are we suggesting, say, the 4th of April?
Yes, 4th of April, Monday the 4th.
Yeah, okay. Is that all right with other members of the committee? I've got my council diary here. I don't know if anybody else has. Would that cause a problem for anybody?
I think the point is, Madam Chairman, we don't want to be too near the elections.
Yeah,
with
I think
the
that's what the point that was made before, I think. Thank you. The only comment I've got about this is, will we have a further report on the terms of reference before the, during the meeting in April? Because obviously, in some senses, the terms of reference for a new scrutiny group will probably be better to be agreed prior to the next term of the councils, really, starting in May. So if they were agreed, it would be better. So I don't know whether we're going to get a follow-up report on that, are we, as a forward work programme item?
Depending on the time, it'll go obviously through FA&PM next week, and then it would either come back to this committee on February, or depending on when it goes through the Fire Authority, if it goes through the February meeting of the Fire Authority or the March meeting. So that's something I need to discuss with, obviously, pending the outcome of the FA&PM. I need to discuss with the chair and deputy chair of the Fire Authority before fetching it back to this group.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to have it back so that, at the start of May 22, when obviously there'll be the elections and there'll be new councillors, it would be useful if we got the terms of reference of the scrutiny committee. I mean, it's called group, but really I think it ought to be called committee, really. But sorted before then, because it will be better timing, I think, for that. But I don't know what your opinion is.
Yeah, obviously that's the ambition, I think, of everyone, to get through the Fire Authority now before the end of the municipal year, and then obviously finalised through this group then, so that the firm proposals are in place and ready for the AGM in next June then.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Garrett. Is there any... Oh, sorry, Councillor Shaw, did you want to come in?
I was rather hoping Garen would get it there for me, but there's two things really that I would like to just draw our attention to. First of all, the member champion issue has to be carried forward because part of that has been delayed. And the other one that caught my eye really was the draft annual governance statement. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Yeah. The 7th of Feb.
7th of Feb, yeah. Oh no, that's probably okay, I think.
Yeah. Obviously, with the decision on the member champions was to roll that forward to the next municipal year now, so the two will be stay in place, and the next two then will be on the forward work programme for the next municipal year.
Okay.
Oh yes, I think we agreed that two of the members who were already existing members would carry on, and then there was 2 vacancies. Yeah.
Yeah, partially resolved, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think on the have any other members got any comments they want to make? No. So if on the if on this forward work plan we could add the idea of the terms of reference of the new scrutiny group or committee, if that's at all possible, if we could note that. So the next item is to consider any items of business that the chairman deems urgent. Well, I don't think there are any items that are deemed urgent. So Sarah, when's the next meeting of this group? Oh, it's on the forward plan, isn't it?
Yes, on the forward plan, it's the 7th of February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you all members thank you for officers for the presentations, and thank you members for attending and for your questions, and just to wish you all a happy Christmas and New Year, and so that our next meeting, well, for this group anyway, will be the 7th of February 2022. Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.